Today, we are talking about cross-generational readiness for faster AI adoption. Now, Formers Pro and ourselves run a lot of these webinars with the Microsoft TSI team, soon to be renamed, which we'll get to in a second. And sometimes we'll talk about technology. So if you go on YouTube, there's a lot of stuff talking about the Power Platform and dynamics and how to adopt tech. Recently, we've been talking about AI. You may have heard AI is the next big coming thing. A lot of news out about it at the moment. It's been around for the last 5 years, and you can't go anywhere if you deal with Microsoft without hearing about it, unfortunately. But there's what we found with the non-profit sector, especially, is there's a lot of psychological pushback. So it's not so much the tech, it's the people. So our last 2 or 3 webinars, we've actually been talking about AI and user adoption, sort of that real hearts and minds piece. I think the last one was on it was burnout, wasn't it, Steve? So it was actually how to deal with burnout, and actually help burnout with AI. And actually, that's a really good one to look at if anybody hasn't caught it already. I think the previous one was leadership, and we'll touch on a little bit of that today. But the big point of today is cross-generational readiness. So who are we and why are we talking to you? So my name's James. I'm the head of marketing here at Formers Pro. I bounced around in my early career. I've always done marketing, but I started out in the travel sector, actually worked as a travel writer for a bit. And I ended up in the medical sector. And for the last 5-10 years, I've worked in the tech sector for a variety of different Microsoft partners. But I love talking AI and I love talking to non-profits. That tends to be sort of my speciality. I do a lot of non-profit training in AI, hearts and minds piece, which is how I've tended to get roped into these. Can't talk about the tech at all. Do not trust anything I say on technology. But if it comes to AI or actual hearts and minds adoption, I'm here to help.
Hey James, hey all, I'm Steve. So I'm our business development manager for the not-for-profit sector. So my background is kind of technology, sales and business development, charities. A lot of my current and previous roles has just been around talking to a lot of different not-for-profit leaders and professionals and helping them make sense of all the technology and transformation options out there and help them kind of connect with each other and share success stories and horror stories and just generally make these processes a lot easier for not-for-profits.
So Steve's word, you can trust on the tech, just not me. What will we be talking about today? So quick introduction to who we are. Thank you to the TSI team. And then we're going to get into the sort of the real nitty gritty of what are the actual challenges that we that we've seen in cross-generational readiness. And it wouldn't be a webinar if we didn't talk about some practical solutions that you can actually take away and sort of try and implement in your own non-profits. So starting with Formers Pro, we were founded 13 and a half years ago, doing the maths quickly in my head, by a man called Glenn Powell, who's still our CEO and founder. And what he was finding is a lot of non-profits weren't being served well by the Microsoft partners out there at the time. A lot of non-profits were just ending up with a random sort of Microsoft partner who didn't specialize in the non-profit sector. And actually that can be dangerous for both the partner and the non-profits. You speak a tribal language. You have your own sort of needs, grant management, fundraising, gift aid, donor engagement, donor churn. If you don't understand these on a really intimate level, actually stuff can go wrong quite quickly. So he actually formed Formers Pro to help the non-profit sector. Our first client was the cancer charity Anthony Nolan. They're still with us 13 years later, still working on a variety of different projects that have evolved over the years. I always make this joke, but we're not still working and trying to deliver a project from 13 years ago, I promise. But yeah, that's us. I think about 65% of our clientele is non-profit. The rest obviously being made up from the commercial sector, public sector, membership organisations, clean energy firms. But most of the staff at Formers Pro work at Formers Pro because we like helping the non-profit sector, including me and Steve. And as you can see there, it's a variety of our clients.
Yeah, we've got a lot of different not-for-profits there, like Rethink Mental Illness, focus on kind of fundraising, volunteering, but you've got membership associations in there, like the Institute of Mechanical Engineers, and I think not-for-profits come in all shapes and sizes, but these generational challenges and leadership challenges and burnout challenges are the same in my experience across a lot of them. So hopefully these tips are universal today and can help everyone out with something.
Fingers crossed. So just a quick thank you to the TSI team. They obviously helped set this up. I assume you will have all signed up from an email you received from the TSI team. So just thank you to them. absolutely fantastic organization. If you're not too aware of them, they form part of the Microsoft philanthropy arm. So they're a team that sits under there, and they are actually a non-profit organization themselves. Any money that the non-profit team, sorry, the TSI team generate actually gets plowed back into the non-profit sector, either in terms of learning or development, or actually discounts in your licensing. I've had conversations with some of our commercial clients, and they would cut their right arm off to get access to the licensing costs that you all get. And their mission, and they were founded 8 years ago, to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. So it's a lofty goal and one they do really well. And they set out to create a new business model, and that was through capacity building through a partner ecosystem, which is where people like Formers Pro and me and Steve come in. But they wanted to do a social investment model where everything they made gets invested back in, creating just affordable technology and solutions. And I won't dive into this too much because it's not why you're here today, but these slides are sent out. But just as a quick heads up, the TSI team, as you know them, are actually changing because Microsoft love to change names, and going forward you'll know them as Microsoft Elevate. And the reason they're doing that is they're now going to be looking after the non-profit sector, and I'm still getting details. It literally was announced sort of late last week, but it looks like they're going to be helping the younger education sector as well, which I think fits right into their mission and is absolutely fantastic, because so much of technology adoption these days is about education. So yeah, in the last 12 months they've raised over 4.7 billion in in grants or discounted software and services, which is a big old number. They've actually donated 250 million directly from Microsoft employees, which Microsoft obviously matched, and they're currently helping just over 377,000 non-profits. But hopefully by the end of this call there'll be a couple more, which I know will make Steve happy. Yeah, we'll obviously send this slide out. This slide is slightly out of date. Everything changed at the start of July, and I didn't notice until last night, so I'll get this an updated one of this. But just so you can, when you are looking at the slide deck later, you can just see some of the costings, and it's nothing. It really isn't for the non-profit sector. But moving away from TSI, Steve, shall we get started with something that, the actual challenges for cross-generational readiness? And as I said at the start of this call, it's something that's often overlooked when people do talk digital transformation, when they do talk AI adoption, especially in the non-profit space, and that's the human element.
Yeah, I find it's easy to think that this stuff's all about the technology, getting the technology right and integrating it with the rest of your systems and platforms. But
Yeah.
The reality is transformation starts with people, not your tech stack. If you don't get the people bit right, there's no point going further.
Yeah, and that's especially right for non-profits. Your staff, your volunteers are going to be incredibly diverse. I mean, if we just take your volunteers, depending on the type of non-profit you are, if, for example, you have shops on the high street, there's quite a potential there for a large number of baby boomers, people in their 60s and 70s. If you depend on the charity, it may be that you have quite young, and yesterday we talked a lot about millennials and Gen Z, but it's entirely possible you've got with parents Gen Alpha volunteers, and you don't really find that in the commercial sector. It's a unique problem to the non-profit sector.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a gap, isn't there, with you've got the long-serving staff who've built their careers on like trust and relationships and organizational context, and then you've got the younger generation working nowadays who have grown up with digital tools, and the mix creates a bit of a unique challenge, I think, especially when you're trying to roll out AI and like really impactful and slightly unexplored tools like that. But yeah, it's important to think of these mixes of backgrounds and gaps in perhaps knowledge sometimes as strengths, actually, and they can be used to your advantage, which we'll talk about a bit later on.
Yeah, and as I was saying with volunteers, that's actually even more relevant to volunteers. So when somebody volunteers their time to help your organization, they're doing it to make a difference in the world, to impact your mission. They're not learning. Oh, right, could I volunteer to learn AI, please? That just doesn't happen. Volunteers have very limited time to spend learning new systems, and it's that mix that creates, we think anyway, your unique challenge when you're trying to roll out AI within your non-profit and finding you're getting pushback. It's not, so it's a volunteer issue, but it's not. And so although this entire webinar is about cross-generational acceptance. It's not just generational. It's about mindsets too, and that can be baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Zs, or even Gen Alphas. Some people will see AI as an opportunity. Others are going to see it as a threat, or, and I say this in quote marks, trash, which I see a lot online, and they're just opposed to it for far too many different reasons.
Especially your volunteers, like you're saying, you've got to be so conscious of the amount of time that you're asking them for. And yeah, if you go about it in the wrong way, if it's a mandate rather than something that's inclusive, then you're going to lose volunteers much quicker and more silently as well, I think, than you're going to lose your staff.
Absolutely. The challenge isn't whether AI can do what you need it to do. We know AI can help solve your problems. It's whether your staff are ready, willing, and able to make that leap with you. That hearts and minds piece that is so important.
Yes, can't wait anymore, can it? The genie's well and truly out of the bottle, and I'm having so many conversations with not-for-profit organisations at the moment about everyone's in varying degrees of stages, but a very common question is like, where do we even start? Is our data right? Are our people prepared for it? And it's almost, there's so many variables in that question that I think the not-for-profit sector isn't necessarily getting the help and guidance it needs at the moment for that.
No, Steve, you're so right. And actually, it feels like I'm insulting the nonprofit sector now, and I don't mean this, but actually you're already behind the curve. So I assume, give me a quick thumbs up if everybody's here to, when you think of AI, you think of generative AI, and I'm talking sort of ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Copilot. So if we're talking about modern AI, is that what everyone sort of thinks and feels about AI? That's your understanding of it? Quick thumbs up. Yep. Excellent. I had a feeling it was. Actually, there's a new wave of AI come in that you may or may not have heard of, agentic AI, and that's true decision making. So as a really sort of like throwaway example, if you were organizing a fundraising event, you might go to Copilot or ChatGPT and say, right, create me copy for a landing page. You would then go and manually do it. Agentic AI working at its best actually will take, and it's still in its infancy, it's still only been around sort of 4-6 months now, but agentic AI, you can sort of go and say, right, I'm organizing a fundraising event. Your agentic AI, your agent, will go away and book the hall for you where you may be doing the AI. It then may order you a bunch of swag and order the catering and then say, right, done. That's scary. And actually, a lot of the commercial sort of sector, they're already adopting agentic AI now. They're experimenting with it. So AI is just going to get quicker and quicker and quicker. And I think that's the big thing with this is it's repositioning AI as something that isn't scary.
Yeah, in the not-for-profit sector, people's time and resources and, everything's so stretched. And on the one hand, is everyone too stretched to adopt new tools like this? But on the other hand, tools like this will mean that you don't have to bury your head in admin all day, every day anymore. And it will unlock some like automations, especially with agentic AI when we get there. It can replace really menial parts of a lot of jobs, basically. So yeah, it's something that definitely shouldn't be ignored. But I also think that there are lessons that we can learn from perhaps businesses in the commercial sector who are taking the leap first. Yeah. Because as I was saying earlier, there's not a lot of information out there that's all singing from the same hymn sheet around how you need to prepare for AI. So definitely watch how others have tried and succeeded or tried and failed, but certainly be thinking about this and starting to shape it now. Don't just wait until there are loads of examples out there.
Yeah, you're not just risking your efficiency or missed efficiency. It's so much deeper than that. If you're not adopting it now, you're actually risking disengagement and frustration, burnout. If you just imagine there's two nonprofits side by side, one's fully adopted AI and has all the tools. Why would you work for the one that you have to do everything manually? You're going to lose your staff and volunteers in droves because ultimately, nobody works for a non-profit because they think they're going to become a millionaire. They work for a non-profit because they want to change the world, not fill out Excel spreadsheets and write manual copy constantly.
That's it. Yeah, people, if they're burnt out and feel excluded, and especially from big change initiatives like AI adoption or digital transformation projects, that morale dip, we've seen it so many times. It really affects the impacts that your organization's mission can have, as well as just your IT literacy and what tools and platforms that you've got. So it's really not just a tech conversation at all. It's like burnout. It's a leadership conversation. It's around people centricity. So yeah, that's obviously why we're all here today. But yeah, this is a big picture that we can all kind of try and bring together and solve as a kind of collective strength, I think, if you get all these moving parts right.
Absolutely agreed. So there is a lot of problems on this slide: unclear digital baselines, generational divides, lack of clear AI leadership, volunteer complexities, fear of job replacement. We're going to touch them all briefly, but I don't want you looking at that and thinking, oh my God, there's so many barriers to adoption. This just isn't going to happen, and switch off. Almost all of these, if not all of these, aren't, well, they are a barrier, but if you take them and flip them on their head, they're also an opportunity. So what we're just going to quickly do is take 5 minutes and dig into what's actually getting in the way when you're actually trying to roll out this new technology, this new AI in your actual specific non-profits.
Let's start with the obvious one, generational divides. So I think not-for-profits are actually really unique. Not-for-profits and public sector organisations, I tend to find this in. You've got people who have been there for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And then obviously you've got the younger intake of new staff and volunteers. And so there's definitely, on average, a bigger generational divide in not-for-profit organisations compared to commercial organisations where, fibre, for example, I learned the other day, is the churn is like a year on average the person spends in a role in a fibre company and moves on. So It's such a prevalent challenge within not-for-profits. And then some of these people are going to be more comfortable experimenting with AI tools. And then you've got the other side of the fence of people are going to be way more cautious, and rightly so. That then links directly to cultural resistance to change. So for some people, AI and new technology is going to feel like it's disruptive, like a disruption rather than an opportunity. And yeah, one thing we hear all the time is people default to, well, that's just the way I've always done it. And yeah, that is not the mindset we should be having when adopting these tools. But changing that mindset can really overall affect the culture of the organization. So getting something like this right can have kind of knock-on effects for any similar projects you're doing down the line where people's morale can, be similar.
Yeah. My old marketing director, when I first started in marketing, he had a great phrase, and it was, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always had. It doesn't open up any new opportunities. And we all know how competitive the non-profit sector is at the moment. Unfortunately, the public only has so much money to donate. There's only so many grants that can be applied for. And actually, just going back a couple of slides to the different generations, it's easy when we talk about cross-generational readiness to make this think it's an age thing. So, right, old people bad at AI, young people good at AI. Actually, we don't find that the case at all. There's a lot of older generations that are actually sort of leaping into AI 2 feet first, whereas actually there's a lot of people coming out of school, colleges and universities, who have had it beaten into them that AI is bad. You may not use AI for anything. So it's not as clear cut as old bad, young good. It's just not that simple. And in fact, some of the younger generations have moral implications with their AI as well. Artists being a great one. I'm not going to use AI because it steals artwork, which is a completely legitimate point of view. Although harks back to our previous slides with the genie's out of the bottle, those that can't use AI are going to struggle, both on an individual career level and a non-profit level. But yeah, sorry, that to elaborate your point there, Steve, sort of coming back to these points, one of the ones that I find a lot when I'm talking to non-profits is volunteers again. We all know they're essential, but they don't have the time or incentives to learn new systems. So how do we increase volunteers adoption of AI? And actually that's one of the points we'll get to on the next slide.
That's where your fear of overwhelm comes in as well, doesn't it, with people that just haven't got the time already in the day. And then
not my fear of overwhelm, just in general
people's of AI overwhelm. And yeah, especially to volunteers, AI can sound quite intimidating and complicated. And then you've got people worrying, am I going to be left behind with all this? And then there's that other side of the fence with the younger people who the example you gave, James, that actually almost want to be left behind because they are averse to it. So you've got different mindsets that you kind of need to figure out different ways to get over when it comes to overwhelm and mission overload.
Yeah. And actually, that takes us quite neatly to a big fear that everybody has with AI. It's like, why am I going to help you adopt AI? It may be good for the non-profit as a whole. I don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be replaced. And that fear is particularly sort of predominant amongst the older staff that have, perhaps done the job for 20 years and now thinking, well, this is what I've always done. If I start using AI so I can squeeze all my work out into a day, does that mean they're going to just get rid of me now? And it's a genuine fear. Now, we know that just frees people up to do much more important stuff, but actually, it's a legitimate fear that needs to be explained, empathized with, and dealt with.
Point there is something I hear all the time as well when I'm talking to not-for-profits. That's probably the main concern, aside from data security, is people being afraid that it's going to take their jobs. And I think it's a mindset shift is necessary around this. It's
from the top down, isn't it?
Yeah, and that is a leadership thing. So leadership has played a constant in a lot of the webinars we've done, because it really is with this lead by example. Like, if you want your staff and volunteers to adopt AI as a leader, then you better be doing it yourself, and you better be testing the use cases. And that ties in, I think, to some of the later stuff around kind of being a bit more experimental with AI.
But even then, if leadership decides to just roll AI out, you do have that inconsistent digital literacy baseline. You are going to have people that use AI at home. An example I gave last night was there's a lot of people that, and if we use Google as an example, if you were searching for a restaurant near yourself previously, what do I want to eat tonight? Restaurants near me would be a Google search. Actually, if you're using AI these days, and a lot of people do, it's, hi ChatGPT, hi Copilot, I'm hungry. This is what I had for lunch. This is what I had for dinner last night. I don't really fancy Mexican. I don't really fancy Chinese. Actually, that's a good point. Nothing too spicy. Can you find 10 restaurants near? And the way they interact with AI is much more in depth than they will do with any other app that in their life. But not everybody is there, which does present problems when you're trying to roll everything out, because that baseline, it's not a line. It's a really jagged up and down problem for you.
And there's the other big one is past baggage, and that's something I also see a lot. Going back to the point of the not-for-profit sector, maybe not necessarily being serviced as well as it should. There are a lot of tech horror stories out there of previously failed projects and implementations, and there's a lot of that past baggage weighing on staff. And they'll carry that skepticism forward. I think we're in an advantage though with AI in that it is perceived as slightly different to a lot of the technologies that we're used to trying to implement in not-for-profit settings. And so, this is probably a good opportunity as well to disconnect it from some of that past baggage and get everyone working slightly differently with a tool that is seen as, different and innovative.
5 years on, I think we can safely say AI isn't a fad.
Just about.
Just about. Turning your barriers into strengths. This is the bit that everybody wants to hear.
Yeah, so when you flip them and instead look at, what kind of opportunities can this stuff actually bring, and see what strengths come out of it. Thinking about your cross-generational workforce as an asset rather than a hurdle is immediately the mindset you should be adopting, because there is the divide in knowledge and experience, but different generations also bring a lot of different strengths to the table that can actually complement each other.
And this is where we actually do sort of get, and there are sort of stereotypes involved here, so take everything we say with a pinch of salt. It's not as clear cut as this, but your younger team members, they might be more naturally tech savvy, whereas your more experienced staff, they can have wisdom, patience, and context. What's key here is some of your younger staff, your younger volunteers, might know how to use the tech, but your more experienced staff who have been serving your mission for the last 15-20 years will know that the best way for that tech to be used, how it can be implemented in the best way to advance that mission forward. And that's what, with cross-generational readiness, what you need to encourage. It's almost a form of mentoring, whether that's formal mentoring or it's just an informal collaboration. It needs to be done in such a way as not just everyone in the organization, but the organization as a whole benefits.
Taking that learning and mentoring a bit further, fostering a culture of shared learning and curiosity is something that you can do with these kind of cross-generational divides. Instead of trying to force people along the journey, make it more enjoyable, invite them into it, make it more social, frame AI as not a threat or a mandate, but something that people can actually explore together.
Yeah.
And then it shifts the narrative from compliance to curiosity, which is far more engaging regardless of what generational category you fall into.
Yeah, you tell anybody to do anything, they're just going to dig their heels in and say no. But you actually start to build momentum through a culture of curiosity. Well, what can we use AI for? Suddenly you've got ideas flying at you left, right, and center, which actually leads on to a really good sort of practical point, and it probably one of the biggest points of this talk. You need to create safe spaces for experimentation. In the tech sector, we call it fail safe, fail fast. People need to understand on a fundamental level they ain't going to get this right the first time. They are going to muck it up. And that's absolutely okay if done in such a way as your data is secured and it's safe, and the organization isn't going to come crashing around their ears because they've used AI wrong. So you need to, and this is where leadership needs to sort of implement this from the top. People need to have the room to ask what might feel like the really stupid basic questions without any kind of judgment. There is no stupid question when it comes to AI, whether that be you create sandbox environments for people to play in, informal learning groups, lunch and learns, formal or informal mentorships, just making time for exploration and celebrating the small wins, giving people that psychological safety. Actually, that's where digital adoption, AI adoption starts.
And that stuff you can incorporate in these informal training groups or social situations, like get a team together working on some stuff with AI and get everyone at the end of the session to come back with one win or success and then one failure. Almost treat the failures like a win within themselves, which in essence they really are with this sort of stuff. But yeah, another practical tip around sort of creating a sandbox environment, maybe something I've been talking to a few not-for-profits about is if you're a grant proposal writer, if you already have SharePoint, create a document folder that's just yours in SharePoint, not connected to any of your other organizations' files and documents, and then use Copilot in there to analyze 10 to 20 previously successful grant applications that you've written and get it to draft a new one based on a fictitious grant application that you've created, and then tweak it, get it to see how good it is. On the other side, if you've got skeptics and they are sure that no matter how safe AI is, that your data is going to get leaked, we'll try and get them to break it. Lock your AI off from anything else and get them to spend an hour trying to leak fictitious sensitive data, see if they can, see how secure it is. Yeah, pretty much. So I think it caters to a lot of people with different mindsets, that sort of approach.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff for training is great, although quick thumbs up. Who enjoys grant writing or reading grants as they come in? I'm not expecting too many. Yeah, no thumbs up, Steve. So it's a great call and actually well worth doing, especially with the trying to break it. If you want to take it back even further to its very fundamental level, something that I do quite often when I'm training people AI is at its most basic. Generative AI is how to prompt. So I put to people on Microsoft Designer or Copilot, ChatGPT, anything like that, and say, right, who can get and think of a really random image, who can get closest to this image with a single prompt, because it then teaches people how to prompt correctly, and you can then all share the prompts you used and how you got to that and how you tweaked the prompt and what context you gave it. GCSE is great for there, which is goal, source, context and expectation, which we actually have covered in other webinars, so I won't get too in depth with, but actually those lunch and learn basic training sessions, that's where your staff feel empowered. It's where they start going, actually, this isn't a threat. I can start to see the use of it. And it's where that momentum really starts to build slowly but surely. However, we are a tech company, so we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the tech stack slightly that helps AI. Now, we are cards down. We are a Microsoft partner, so we think Microsoft is the best solution here. However, lots of other people do, so I think we're in good company. Most of you, even if you're not using Dynamics, even if you're not using the Power Platform, you probably use Outlook, Word, Excel, and probably a bit of Copilot. So we've talked about people, we've talked about mindsets, we've talked about culture a little bit, but actually diving into the technology, the reason we think Microsoft is the best to help you with adopting AI is because it's designed with AI at the forefront. Microsoft has spent a lot of time over the last 5 years and a lot of money and a lot of effort making sure that AI is first and making sure that that AI is inclusive. They've actually implemented tools that actually help make this kind of stuff easy.
And they've been doing that alongside over probably the last 5-6 years, making all of their other tools and applications a lot more user-friendly and less reliant on developer code, and much more. You can do a lot more with just drag and drop configuration. Like a non-techie can easily wrap their head around how to configure Dynamics in comparison to, some software that maybe people have worked on 10 years ago that was totally custom.
I can do it these days.
Which is saying,
no. I can say that, Steve. You can't. But yeah, it's a good point. AI doesn't require any kind of tech-savvy knowledge anymore, and that's the furthest from the truth with the Microsoft ecosystem. It's been designed with AI first in mind and inclusivity in mind, not just as a feature, but as a fundamental principle. So let's start. I'm going to let you start off, but let's have a look at the big picture, Steve. So non-profit sector, what are they probably using here?
Yeah, a lot of our not-for-profit clients and not-for-profits I talk to, the CRM tends to be the centerpiece. So that's where you'd have Microsoft Dynamics or some of the other proprietary tools that are out there. And Copilot is already built into a lot of the modules in there. So if you've got a fundraising solution, it can help you really quickly with donor insights and automated processes there. But I think actually a good place to start is with the Microsoft 365 stack. You can get very quick wins from a kind of personal satisfaction, job satisfaction perspective if you start using Copilot and Outlook to summarize an email chain that you haven't had a chance to look at for 4 hours because you've been in meetings and then you've got to spend 10 minutes reading through it. This sort of stuff, it's hard because there's not as tangible of a return on investment with little things like that as there would be with getting donor insights that you can then personalize more of your marketing towards from Copilot in the fundraising CRM area. But if you start to think of ROI as time that people are saving through not having to do admin anymore, and therefore the time that they can spend increased in delivering the mission and the human element of their day jobs, then I think actually you'll both get buy-in a lot quicker, and opening your mind up to that different way of seeing the long-term return on investment, that will allow you to, I think, feel more free to roll out pockets of AI that are impactful to people.
Yeah, and it's those little pockets that, if you almost think of them as droplets of water, they'll start flowing together and they'll start merging, and eventually that momentum turns into a flood. But yet, I know this webinar is about cross-generational readiness, but I think just in Microsoft's for all fairness sake, they've actually designed this with what they call inclusion by design. So they think about the AI features that help people with neurodiverse needs as well. Things like simplified interfaces, step-by-step guidance, built-in accessibility tools, visual impairments or language barriers. All of those are just made simple with AI. And if you think about your volunteer base, that's a really powerful tool that actually you can use to encourage adoption.
Yeah, and there's accessibility in the traditional sense, but there's also, I think, a new sort of definition of accessibility with AI and digital tools is based on digital literacy and digital comfort. And I think there is, Microsoft also make these tools inclusive and accessible in the traditional sense, but I think AI as a whole is going to make it technology a lot more accessible for everyone. And I think when I was at a Microsoft event, probably half a year or so ago now, the sort of slogan was Copilot is the UI for AI. And I think a lot of us can get to a point where we open up Teams and just talk to Copilot to start off our day. And then it's connected to all our other Microsoft apps. And imagine you're someone who hates technology and is so digitally illiterate, you got to log on, type a question to Copilot, and it will bring everything up to you. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the ideal state when you've got everything connected and Copilots and everything, but start small.
And although it's a cultural change, you don't actually have to type to Copilot or ChatGPT. You can talk to it like a person. And it can feel a little Star Trekky when you first start, but quite often I'll log in the morning, I'll boot up Copilot and I'll say, right, I'm a geek, so I've called mine computer, but you can name it whatever you want and it'll respond to that. But I'll say, okay, computer, what are my tasks for today? This is what I'm going to be working on. Help me plan this out. Right, let's start on that. And you can actually have a two-way conversation with it, which actually where the point, and it scares me a little bit with people humanizing AI because it's a tool, but in terms of user adoption, it's a really powerful thing to use. I mean, just using Copilot as an example, it's built into the tool. So it's not separate that you have to go, right, this is what I'm doing, going to go to my AI, go back. Copilot, it's on Word, it's on Excel, it's in Outlook, it's on Teams, it's in Dynamics, it's in GitHub if you're going sort of really technical. But people are already using these, and there's just a little button there, so you can just click it. You can summarize your meetings, you can summarize you can draft emails. If you get sent an email chain of 50 responses, you can say, what's going on here? What do I need to do? It'll pull up insights for you. You can actually pay attention in sort of like hour-long team sessions. And then at the end of it go, I forgot what was I meant to be doing? And it'll tell you, not that I've ever done that, but that's how you, stop laughing at me, Steve. That's how you lower the barrier to adoption. You show people that where the value really is. It's the little stuff that builds momentum.
That's it. I think it's that a lot about choosing tools and use cases that meet people where they are as well, and that's bringing that informal aspect back to it again. Like as a software company, we often hold requirements workshops where we try and understand everyone's like gaps and needs just at an individual level. I think line managers even can, if they give them a certain level of autonomy with staff, they can assess staff's individual levels of comfort, but also what will be the most impactful thing to that individual staff member when it comes to an AI use case, and maybe start there.
Yeah, and somebody just put a comment in the chat. So my favorite accessibility prompt is reduce the, I'm going to take a guess at Flesh Kincaid. I've probably got Flesh completely wrong there. Everyone go and look in the comments instead. But you can actually, oh, I did get it right. Brilliant. So you can go and say to it, reduce the Flesh Kincaid score of this document to between 70 to 80, which is a readability score of 70 to 80 can be grasped clearly and easily by most adults. And that's actually a really good point because I tend to just say, summarize this as though I'm 5 or 10 or 15, but that seems a much more professional way of doing that. And it's a great prompt. Thank you for that one.
One of the biggest things as well before we move off of this one is, it seems obvious that if you know about it already, then it is. But if you are looking for some inspiration or looking to learn more about how to prompt or what good prompt looks like, ask Copilot or ask the AI tool. I want you to do this for me, but I don't know how to ask you. Craft me a prompt based that will provide me with these outcomes that I've specified that I want.
Meta prompting, it's known as, and it's an absolutely amazing tool. You can actually prompt it and then say, was that prompt any good? How could I write that prompt better? And then once actually the work's done, you can then say, right, ChatGPT, Copilot, how would you improve this? But again, that takes staff training because quite often people used to the old way of working they'll input a command and they'll get their sort of stuff back and they'll go, well, that's no good. AI is rubbish. If you actually teach them how to iterate with AI, that becomes a really powerful ability. To just summarising this, because I've just got one eye on the clock, and I'm aware most of you will probably join us on lunch. Thank you. But inclusive transformation isn't just about training people differently. It's about choosing the tools that meet them where they currently are, and that's important. And that's why Microsoft ecosystem makes that possible. And it's a big reason why I hope you can tell why we're so passionate about both the non-profit sector and Microsoft as a whole. But practical strategies in a mixed comfort environment. And I just want to point out that this table, it is a feedback loop. It's not a once and done. It's once you actually get to make AI approachable and fun, you then go back to assessing readiness level. So let's get to the really practical points. If you take nothing else away from this talk, take this slide, and it's about having the right mindset and having the right tools. But actually, you still need the strategy as well. How do you actually go about rolling this out to a team when not everybody is going to be at the right level? And one of the tips we sort of recommend you all use quite quickly is building something called a skills matrix.
Yeah, so we do that for our like developers and architects and consultants, because the Microsoft business applications ecosystem is so vast that one person might be an expert in Dynamics CRM, but they've never used Power BI, and vice versa. And so our consultants have a self-filled out skills matrix. They rank themselves 1 to 10 on each module or each technology or tool. And then when we need someone for a project, we can see that they've done it themselves. It's a constantly shifting thing. If someone becomes more comfortable in something, they'll up their skills in it. And I think where you let people do that themselves, you'll find it a lot easier, I think, to have an accurate barometer of people's skill levels on a fluctuating basis. People will be more comfortable as time goes on to rate themselves more accurately. And again, it's that whole thing about inclusivity. You doing it, you rating their skills as a manager, that might be accurate, but it's not going to make them feel involved. Whereas get them to do it, little things like that can instill a positive mindset in people.
Skills matrix are also good for buddy systems and for mentorship systems, because you can actually then see who's on opposite ends, because a skills matrix should look like a square or an octagon. So it's not about finding who's here, team them up, because actually what you're then going to have is one AI advocate teaching everyone. You can actually look at your skills matrix and say who's here, and match them up in a way that really sort of works. It all has to start with both your team and yourself assessing that digital readiness and documenting it, building that skills matrix. And I sort of hark back to an earlier point. Don't assume everyone's skills or comfort levels just because of age or role or job title. Your assumptions are probably going to be wrong. There will be people at home that have been playing with this already that might surprise you. So you create that clear picture of where people are at, where their confidence, and it's not just about their skills. Get them to rank their confidence levels with that as well, because actually you want to benchmark with this feedback loop to be able to look back at it over time to measure your ROI as people's confidence levels change, as their openness to AI changes. Even document their current pain points, but write it down somewhere so that you can build on it over time. That's got to be the first step.
That's right. We just got a comment there from someone saying they've used ChatGPT to analyze documents but found it unreliable and it returned wrong information. And that is probably another big barrier to AI adoption. It's the hallucinations that AI can spit out. And that is still definitely an issue. And it means that AI isn't good at some things, whereas it's better at other things. It's really bad at numerical analysis, for example. I would not trust it to calculate your accounts yet. But certainly for more manual tasks that can be automated, more like drafting documents and creative writing and stuff like that, it is particularly good at in comparison. But you have to feed it the right things sometimes, which is also part of the training. So if you want it to analyze a document, give it more comparisons and re-prompt it. That's one thing you like, James, isn't it? Don't just write the one prompt. You've got to keep refining and refining.
There's also, and I hate pushing back to our audience members, the AI genie is out of the bottle. So AI gets stuff wrong. It absolutely does. It's not meant to take you 100% of the way there. There's a reason Microsoft call it Copilot rather than Pilot. But my pushback to this, and it's not aimed at anyone that's leaving comments, but just in general when you're sort of talking to your staff, it's not perfect. I've got a car sitting on my driveway out there. It can't fly. I would love for it to be able to fly, but it can't. So it's not perfect. That doesn't mean I'm not going to use my car. It's great. It'll get me 80-90% of the way there. So if I want to go to holiday to Greece, I can't drive the whole way. I'm going to have to get an aeroplane. That doesn't mean the car is bad. It means it can only do 80% of what I would like it to do. And AI needs to be considered as that. It's a co-pilot, not a pilot. It's not replacing everything. And what it can't do is replace human intuition. Just looking at that comment, sometimes you will look at stuff and go, that's not quite right. But if there's any writers in the room, there's nothing scarier than a blank piece of paper. AI will fill that blank piece of paper for you, and it will do 80% of the heavy lifting. If you're then checking it slightly, yeah, you know what? You shouldn't be putting a prompt in and just relying on that one thing and then running with it. There should be human intervention. Nobody's saying there shouldn't, but it will do most of the heavy lifting for you.
Just coming back to after we said designing inclusive rollouts, once you've got those,
Yeah,
that's
sorry,
when you
I did go off in a bit of tangent there. Apologies, Steve.
That's all right. Once you've got those, then that leads on to the next point about designing your AI rollout with intention and being realistic about pacing and the complexity of what you're introducing and the kinds of support you provide. Some people thrive with hands-on workshops. Others prefer short how-to videos. Some people hate them. So yeah, it's a lot about catering to different people's ways of learning, because people have very different ways of using AI as well.
Yeah, it's blended learning. It's not a one size fit all. It can't be. And if you are looking to introduce AI to your non-profit, which I assume most of you are as you're on this call, you can't just do one thing. As Steve points out, live sessions for those who are going to want to talk and want to on-demand resources for people that want to do it at home. You can even have some people. I mean, I've created a couple of GPTs myself and Copilot sort of agents to actually teach non-profits to do different small tasks. We were working with a youth charity a while ago, and I created a GPT for them to actually write CVs for 16-year-olds with absolutely zero experience. If you've ever had to write a CV for a 16, 17-year-old, there's only so big you can make the font to fill up a piece of paper, but actually what we found is we introduced a small tool and people were like using that tool. It then leads to other questions, and that digital curiosity. Well, if it's doing this, what else can we do? Could we do this? Could we do that? And it's those small droplets of water blending together into a flood.
Yeah, and on that point, I think that some people view overuse of AI as being something that will stifle your lateral thinking or your creativity. But actually, going off your point just there, you get the response and then that sparks off more ideas, and then you give it another prompt and then you refine. So it's actually, I don't know,
You're the pilot.
if you are using it in the wrong way, it might stifle creativity in some areas, but actually there are some really useful long-term goals that will form transferable skills for this AI future that we're all kind of going into now.
And with that implemented sort of blended learning, you also want to create, and this is where we sort of hark back to your skills matrix, you want peer support structures. They're often underestimated, especially in the commercial sector, but we find they're particularly useful in the non-profit sector. And it's not just about AI adoption, it actually makes your culture as a whole more resilient. We find they're game changers. Sometimes people don't want to put their hand up in front of a big group, but they will happily ask a colleague over coffee. So if you're creating a culture where sharing tips, asking questions, where learning together is just a part of how you operate as a non-profit, you're well ahead of the curve. And as you're doing that, don't forget the quick wins. So early on, your job is to show people how AI and digital tools can solve their real problems, whether that's time on saving reports, streamlining comms, automating routine tasks. But if people see the immediate value and you're shouting about those wins, people's willingness to engage is going to grow exponentially.
Yeah, start small, start visible.
Very.
And then you'll get, someone will experience that moment of, oh, that just saved me an hour. And then that's when it fires off in the AI skeptic's brain. And that then, like we were saying earlier, sparks off more ideas about how they can save half an hour there and 15 minutes there. So that's another massive thing, contradictorily, is start small. Don't go all encompassing with this stuff. Let the commercial businesses do that and watch them fail and claw back hundreds of employees because they thought that AI could run their contact center, for example. And, just start small, learn from the industry, fail safe. Yeah, create digital inclusivity, freedom to fail, view it differently.
And a big part to remember with that is avoid the jargon, avoid complexity. Don't go in talking about LLMs and AGI and agentic and generative. Leave that for us. Actually just relate it back to their day-to-day. Not everybody in your organization needs to understand how AI algorithms work, how they're based on probability and how they search the entire... just doesn't work like that. What you need them to understand is because humans are inherently selfish. They are inherently, this is all about me. The people working for a non-profit probably a lot less so. But if you reframe AI as not so much, what can AI do for your organization, but as what can AI do for your day-to-day work? What can AI do to make your life easier? You're going to find your job halfway there already.
Yeah, it's much easier to paint a picture of what AI can do for your day job versus what can it do for the not-for-profit's mission. It is very powerful linking something like AI adoption to the not-for-profit's mission, which is some advice that we've given before. But you need to make people realize how the AI is improving your mission and therefore improving their individual ability to forward your mission.
Yeah. And if you take that kind of approach, you're not just pushing through AI adoption, you're making your organization as a whole more resilient. And that's a really powerful word in sort of today's market. So yeah, how to build a culture of digital curiosity. We're nearly there. So thank you for everyone for hanging in. But 4 steps that you should really take away.
To start, move from skepticism to experimentation. So resistance often comes from fear. And that's fear of getting it wrong, fear of change, looking silly. And if you just create that environment, like we said, where it's safe to try things, safe to ask obvious questions, there's no stupid questions, celebrated if you fail at something because you've learned from it, you've already won half the battle.
Yeah. And if somebody thinks they have got a stupid question, get them to ask AI instead of yourself, because AI will never judge them. But yeah, that culture, it's just so vital for this. Lasting adoption isn't going to come from your policies. It's not going to come from your mandates or any checklist that you may have done. As important as those are, it's going to come from your staff and volunteers mindset. If you are instilling that curiosity, that sense of whimsy and fun, if people are comfortable asking questions and experimenting and seeing what AI can do next, you've won. I mean, when I was creating notes for this in my speaker's notes, I said you've won half the battle. To be honest, you've won the entire battle.
Another strategy that works really well, which we've obviously covered, is the encouraging cross-generational mentoring. That can go both ways. So your younger staff might share quick tips on cool AI features they've found really useful or particular productivity tools. But then your more experienced staff can shed light on how that fits into the process or the context, or if a particular tool is a fad versus actually that right there that you're working on, that's great. Let's go full in on that. So I think one group can provide a lot of innovation. The other group can actually make that fit in with the organization, and not go too far and run in a direction that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and we've already covered celebrating the small wins. So I think the biggest part is if you can link all this back to your mission. So reframe it as it's not just about making operations smoother or saving time, because quite frankly, that's dull. It's about doing more for your mission. When your staff, when your volunteers, when your leadership teams can see how AI and digital tools are helping deliver real world outcomes, how they're pushing and accelerating your mission forward, whether that's reaching more people, providing faster support, freeing up more time for human connections. You're not writing, you're not spending 3 days writing a grant. You're out and about helping people. That curiosity shifts, and it goes from this is fun, this is interesting, to wow, this is why I started working for a non-profit in the first place. We need to do this more. And suddenly your staff go from go on, let's give it a go. This is a bit silly, this is a bit fun, to no, this is happening. And actually you're getting pushed from your staff to make stuff happen. And that's awesome when it happens. It's great to see.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's a lot about just as a human as well. You want to be out interacting with other humans. And the more you do, generally speaking, the better that a lot of elements of your life become. You become more confident and whatever. And that, when someone realizes that they thought they couldn't get to an event that the charity was putting on because they had to complete a grant proposal by tomorrow, but actually their new AI agent has done 90% of the work for them, and now they can go to that charity event. That is priceless, that sort of ROI.
The whole thing becomes self-sustaining. And that's the whole point of this. If you start small, if you build your culture first, if you set up those mentorships, if you set up those lunch and learns, it becomes self-sufficient, you become a lot more resilient, and it improves not just your AI adoption, but your entire nonprofit's culture completely. That's about the top of the hour. That's about everything we wanted to say. Me and Steve were aware, however, that actually, a lot of people sort of walk away from this going, that's all brilliant. I still don't know where to start exactly. So what we've actually put together is something that we're calling AI in a day for you. So if you want to get in touch with myself or Steve, it's £1,000 upfront, but it's a product that you can speak to us about. Somebody like myself or one of our tech team will come out and do half a day's training on AI. What's the difference between a generative AI, agentic AI, AGI, how to prompt, all the basic stuff. But we'll actually set up a SharePoint within your organization that's safe, and we'll point a chatbot at it so that your staff can talk to a real sort of chatbot, a real agent about just your personal data. So it's, who was my biggest donor last year? Who was my smallest donor last year? What can I do to encourage more donors? And it's just pointing at your data only. And actually, it's a really great way of getting that started. However, we don't like walking away with not giving you something for free as well. So something we are offering for free is our latest product, FlexCRM. It's a non-profit CRM that's actually free to the sector. So it is designed with smaller non-profits in mind, but anybody that can just download that, get in touch with us. We'll show you how to download it from the Microsoft Store. You can either start using it if you don't have a CRM, or actually if you are using a CRM, you can have a play with it and possibly replace something that you're currently using. No charge for that whatsoever. Take it, use it, run with it. We hope it really helps your mission, because ultimately that's what we're here for, to empower your missions. It's why me and Steve come to work. It's why the rest of us do. And that, thank you for sticking with us, really is sort of the end of the talk. So I'm going to pop these on the screen if anybody does want to connect with us, and then just open it up to the floor. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
Little thing to mention on FlexCRM as well that might just be interesting for people. It is built on Power Apps as well. So if your longer term aspirations are to get like a larger CRM like Dynamics, you can start with FlexCRM, put your data in there. So you've got a single source of truth. And then there's no migration then if you want to move on to something like Dynamics, because it's all on the same Power Apps infrastructure. So I'll stop talking about tech now.
Yeah, it's a really great shout. So yeah, we've done the Q&A. So we're running another webinar next month. Hopefully you'll sign up for that one. We'll send out the details for that. That is about 17 different marketing personas or donor personas and how to target them using marketing automation. Hopefully we can see you on that one. If not, it's been amazing speaking to you all, and good luck with your mission. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Thanks all. Bye.